Good morning. How are you guys doing today? I am dressed up like a Viking today because I'm going to Burka this weekend. And when I go to Burka, and I'm not doing official things, which I'm not for the first time ever since my first time at Burka, I'm not doing anything official. Um, so in the past 10 years, this is only the second time that I haven't been busy at Burka. Wow, I'm going to enjoy myself. But in honor of Burka, I made myself a new hood, and I'm so wicked pleased with it. I'm going to take it off in a sec, but I want to show you. So this is how I will probably wear it most of the time because I like the little poof. I do. I thought about doing a Leary pipe on the back and making it 14th century, but I decided I wanted one for my Viking stuff because I have one that's more 14th century that's warmer. Um, and I like this. So it actually is a really long hood, and it would usually be worn like that with the, let me see if I can get it to show, with the floop off the back, like so. Um, but I like wearing it with the pointy thing up because I'm strange. But that's okay. I will say I hand sewed this entire thing. And I also hand sewed the outfit that I have on underneath this, which I'll show you in just a second. But I like kicked butt with it, and I'm quite pleased. So I'm gonna take it off. I'll show you the trim up close because I can. So the trim on this is absolutely stunning. Isn't that gorgeous? I'm like so pleased with it. And I did seam treatments on it. So all of the seams, let me see if I can get one up there. No, there we go. Sorry, I'm working backwards here because my screen does it backwards. This is a herringbone stitch, and it is used for tacking down hems and such. The Vikings actually would have done what we consider the pretty part on the inside, and the little dotted part, which is on the inside, would have been on the outside. But I like my herringbone stitch, and I think it's pretty. But as you can see, the back is nice. It has a nice little gore in there, and that's much lighter. So I'll be able to wear it at events this summer, which I cannot possibly do with the one that I have currently, which I lent to my kid, because the other one is made, the top layer, it's first off, it's lined. So the top layer that you see is a nice tartan wool, and the inside layer, because nobody likes wool against their skin, is actually felted cotton. So it's soft and fuzzy. And so I want you to think about all that warmth, and then think about the fact that our first fair of the season, wherein sometimes we have shoveled snow, this in 2022 in May, we had 97-degree weather and 95% humidity. I am not wearing wool in 97 degrees. I'm surprised I was even wearing cotton. This is made out of, this is a brushed cotton, I think. It's a natural fiber because I did a burn test on it, and it's lovely. I don't have to worry about wearing it around the fire. It's definitely not linen. The weave is not right for it, but I think that it's a type of brushed cotton. So not period to the Viking age, but close enough for government work, and it looks nice. And it's the first new thing I've made for myself in a little bit, and I'm quite pleased. So there. So this is the rest of my Viking outfit. I'll actually stand up and let you guys see it. So it's got a calf length dress, and this overdress is actually fairly short. This is my Viking bling. All my different pieces that I have gotten. I have a Freya, and I have a Thor's hammer, and then I have some Burka rings, which is what these are. They're traditional styled pieces that were found at the Burka pickup. I have some amber on here, and the beads on here are actually glass beads that are made in the style of the Viking beads that have been found at some of the various burial places. So yeah, and these are my, let me pull my hair out of the way. These are my bling holders, tortoiseshell brooches they're called, and they actually go on, so they just have this kind of hook closure. They pop closed like this. I got these from a place called Raymond's Quiet Press, and he does wax impressions of extant actual pieces, and then creates pieces that you can wear. So these are actual museum pieces. They are from an earlier period than I portray, but I'm kind of going with the my grandmother gave them to me kind of thing, because the ones that are from the period that I actually portray, which is 10th century, they have all these big spiky things on them. And anybody out there who knows me, I would end up puncturing myself and killing myself. I am a total klutz, and I don't want to kill myself. So not doing that. Anyway, so now that I've wasted, more than 5 minutes of your time on Viking stuff. Oh, and did you see I have all of my embroidery was all done by hand. Look how pretty it is. By the way, this is what herringbone stitch looks like when you do it on the inside instead of the outside. And this is what it looks like on the outside. Anyway, I was just doing actually a photo shoot with my partner because I wanted to have pictures done in my Viking garb to put up on my website and stuff, and for promotional things and whatnot. So yeah, so that's where I'm at today. Excitement. I'm drinking coffee too because I'm looking outside and watching the snow come down, going, oh, more snow. But it is what it is. I will get my exercise, that's for sure. Okay, so we're talking about editing, right? Today's topic is copy editing, and you can read what I have to say about it in the links. I actually have the article that I'm sort of working from for topic wise is by a place called shorthand.com. You can go look it up for yourself. But copy editing, deep breath, Allie. There we go. Copy editing is the process of reviewing content for grammar, punctuation, and spelling mistakes, checking for consistency of style and formatting. And a copy editor is perhaps the first other person than yourself that you might be bringing into the editing process. So where the substantive editing that you were doing before or content editing was done by you, copy editing is done by you or by somebody that you pay to do. You've finished your first draft, you've finished your second draft and gotten as much of it cleaned up as you can. It's now considerably closer to a finished product. And so now it is time to pass it along to someone else and see what they have to do. A good copy editor does suggestions on how to improve it, the clarity of the writing and the readability of the content. It helps ensure that the final product is free of errors. And if you are writing nonfiction or certain types of fiction that have references, you have to decide which style guide you will be using. So Chicago Manual of Style, MLA, or APA. And that's a whole other deal. So I use MLA editing, and that's what I use when I am making footnotes and references and such. My bibliography is done in that style. That's because most of what I do is what we call soft sciences. So history, as opposed to mathematical. Mathematical will often use, or scientific stuff will often use APA or Chicago. MLA is the one that is most used for soft sciences. History, English. I'm just trying to think of other things. Creative writing, that kind of thing. So what a copy editor will do is they go through your text and they look for grammar and punctuation mistakes, typos, syntax, and capitalization, which is a big one. As the writer, we often don't notice when the capitalization is off a little bit. And, you'll have a capital T and a capital O next to each other instead of capital T, little o. Things like that will sometimes just happen. And your spelling editor doesn't catch that kind of thing because it's not technically wrong, even though it's wrong for the place where it's at. They'll also check, a copy editor will check for correct usage of words and phrases. And that is, they'll go over idioms that you use, metaphors, similes. They'll suggest things. So if you say the plot thickened like gravy, they might say, that's not a great image that you're putting out unless you're talking about cooking. So why don't we talk, about thickened in a different way, like fog lifting or something to that effect. They'll make sure that any tropes and sayings that you're using are correct. So, for instance, a lot of people use the term, the phrase, 6 of one, half a dozen of another. Meaning it doesn't matter which one you do because 6 of one and half a dozen of the other is the same. But somehow or another, somewhere in the group Gestalt mind, that has turned into something else, like 6 of one means half of the other or is half the other, and it doesn't make sense anymore. So a copy editor will catch things like that. They will correct mistakes. And especially if you're writing fiction, a copy editor will sometimes point out if you accidentally change point of view. So as an example, the Alexandra Taylor novels are written in first person. Alex is the person telling the story, and generally speaking, her point of view is the one which you are experiencing the world through. When I write other books in that world, they will not actually be done through Alexandra's eyes because she was the only person who was doing first person. So they will be written third person or third person omniscient, which is third person that you can see everything that's going on and you can jump around and you're God looking down on the story. Or it could be third person personal, which is I'm sticking with the main character and you're only going to get to see what's happening around him. So you might not get his thoughts and you might see more than he can see, but only in his vicinity or as it relates to him. I'm trying to think of a book that uses it, but offhand, my brain is just not functioning well enough to come up with it right now. In any case, copy editing is really important because it makes sure that your text is free of errors and is working its way towards being the best finished product you can have. You can combine copy editing and line editing, and a lot of people will do that. They'll hire an editor that does both. It's a little more expensive, but well worth it because somebody who does line editing, we'll talk about that next week. That's a whole other thing. Excuse me. Apparently I breathed funny. But you really want to be on for copy editing, it's so important. You have to get somebody in to look at it because you can't really copy edit your own work. It is just not. And I know I'm saying this somewhat hypocritically because I have edited a lot of my own stuff because I don't have money, like a lot of us, to pay somebody else to do it. But I do a lot of things to make sure that I catch my mistakes. For instance, I use grammar editors online. I have a couple that I will run it through. I run it through something called the Hemingway editor, which Hemingway editor highlights some of the more problematic. I'm just going to pull it up. Way editor. Should have pulled it up beforehand, but I didn't really think. It's Hemingway app, HEMINGWAYAPP.com. It's free. What you do is you take a piece of text, you copy and paste it into the editor, and it flips up your stuff and it covers it in highlighting. So it tells you how many adverbs you have, how many uses of passive voice, and it will say, so the piece of writing that's currently in the Hemingway app has 2 adverbs, which meets the goal of 2 or fewer. Now, obviously, this is not true of every single piece of writing. This is a generalization. 1 use of passive voice, meeting the goal of 2 or fewer. 1 phrase has a simpler alternative. So, for instance, in this one, it says you can utilize a shorter word in place of a purple one. In this case, utilize was purple. And you can change it to use. You can use a shorter word. And for some writing, especially if you're doing fiction and you want readability, switching to those less wordy words is actually preferred in some cases because it allows more readers to read your stuff. On the other hand, if you're writing a paper on, the chemical properties of contact lens solution, sometimes the bigger words are more correct because from a scientific perspective, they have more meaning. See, it really depends on what you're writing. So this particular one says one of 11 sentences is hard to read. So that's because it's a sentence with a semicolon in it. Technically, it thinks that this writing should have that split into 2 sentences. And then it says if you see a red highlight, your sentence is so dense and complicated that your readers will get lost trying to follow its meandering, splitting logic. And so you go back, and the goal is to work through until you have no highlighting in your writing, but your writing is still your writing. Obviously, you're not going to get rid of all of the highlights because each of those things that the Hemingway editor is looking for is important, but not so important that it either destroys your voice or changes the meaning of what you're writing. So there's always going to be a time and a place for the things which it says are wrong. And especially if you're writing fiction, you may be ignoring the rules altogether because your character is speaking. And if you have a character who doesn't have English as a first language, or who is young or is uneducated, you may find that that character speaks in a dialect that is grammatically incorrect according to the editor. That doesn't mean you should change it because you don't want to change your character. So that's what I do. They have a desktop app now, which I have not used. And I didn't know that they had it. So it says just released version 3.0. It also tells you the number of words you have in there, and it tells you the readability. So for instance, the piece that they have in here, it says readability is grade 6, good. That means that you have followed all of the rules that they have set out, or most of them, and you've written at a grade level that anyone in grade 6 should be able to read. I will tell you, normal fantasy novels have a readability of somewhere between grade 4 and grade 5. Yeah. Now, obviously that's going to depend on the writer. But if you take, I'm trying to think of a fantasy, well, any of the Xanth novels by Piers Anthony, and pull a random chapter out of there and dump it into the Hemingway editor. First of all, it will tell you it's all full of wrong stuff. And then it will tell you that it's a 5th grade reading level. So that's what you want to aim for, because what it does is it makes your writing readable to the largest possible group of people. And of course, that's what you want. Unless you're writing a thesis or a scientific treatise, or say, obviously, those are different. I'm talking writing fiction or fun stuff. Anyway, copy editor goes through and helps you fix all of your stuff and makes it more correct. So you want to employ somebody to go through your work and look for the mistakes that you can't see. And that's the point of hiring one. Anyway, that's our talk today, copy editing. So share with me whether that's something you do. I actually am almost to the copy editing point in my cookbook. I'm still going through right now. I have several chapters left to do of the content editing. I have to go through and look at my own work before I'm willing to hand it off to someone else. But I do have people who are stepping up to do line editing and content editing for me. So the world is good. Anyway, that's where we're at today. Thank you so much for being here. Feel free to pass this along if you think it would be useful to someone. And don't forget to like and subscribe. See you next week.